How's my 11 o'clock people doing? Yeah, you guys doing good? Man, I loved, as Kevin was kind of talking about stuff, seriously, it was, the final total was 853 people came to experience God's love and grace. And it was, if you missed Easter, I feel bad for you because it was so much fun. The vibe in here was crazy, but more than that, I want to thank you guys because it's not, the volunteers do great, the band does awesome. The people back in children's ministry, I am very thankful for them because it takes a special person to be with that many little people. And so we're real thankful, but more than that, for you guys brought your friends out literally in the droves. I had people saying like, man, I can't wait till I can fill an entire section with my friends. I'm like, that is awesome. And so as your pastor, I just want to say thank you, and you guys can give yourselves a hand for that. It was over the course of 4 services. It was unreal. And the cool part was, is we asked our staff and volunteers, like, we could do that again, and again and again. And as people keep bringing friends, like, man, we're probably going to have to eventually keep doing more services and things. And so I'm so thankful for you guys especially last week, as we kicked off our series, Angels and Demons. And so this is the second week, is we're diving in and looking at this battle that rages for our love, our hearts, for our minds. And in the last final week, we'll look at what does it mean for this battle to kind of happen for our deeds and the things that we do and the things that we're a part of. And last week, as we kind of dove in, we looked at the concept and idea that people are very open to faith, spirituality, things like that, because people will go to, and I'll talk with various people like, man, I'm into like astrology, and that kind of just, they wanted something bigger than themselves. And so they'll go like, well, I'm a Libra, and this person's a Capricorn, and our signs say that we're going to get together and everything, and they'll get pumped about that, and the stars are aligned in such a way, and the moon is out, and so something happens, which is completely not true. And so all these different things that go on, and they go like, man, I want to believe in that. Or others will go like, man, I believe in karma. And if you do good things, that good things will happen. And if you do bad things, you'll get a flat tire, or lightning will strike you, or something like that. And, I hear that, and I'm actually really glad that karma isn't true, as we kind of talk, because I could do all kinds of great things, and bad things are still going to happen. Because we live in a world where bad things happen and bad things take place. And if we get what we deserve, and I mess up and you mess up and bad things happen and we make mistakes, then what we deserve is to be punished for that, right? And so God doesn't even move and breathe in that. What he says is, you know what, I love you, and I want to shower you with grace, and I want to shower you with love. And even though you mess up, and we told and looked in the Easter story of Jesus, is that even though when we mess up and we make mistakes and we fall short, is that God goes, you know what, even in the middle of all that, that's when I'm sending my son to do what he does best, which is the miraculous, and paid a price for all of us. And it was an amazing week just watching people. We had, as you saw in the video in the beginning, we had 2 people that got baptized last week, and you guys missed it this morning because you guys came to this service because you like to sleep a little later, is in our 9 a.m. service, we had a gal get baptized, which was awesome. It's cool just to see every week how God is moving in people's lives. And my hope and prayer is maybe that's you. Whether you've been at this a while and you go, man, I need to take that next step, or you've kind of just been visiting, you go, something isn't sitting right, and you keep hitting on things, and I don't like that you're hitting on things, and it makes me frustrated, and I'm like, okay. And we tell people a lot too, they'll come in and like, man, you like have a video camera in my house because like what you guys said or what you sang and whatever you must have seen. And I love being able to tell people, especially like Easter, because people kept saying like, hey, it was awesome and we'll be back. I'm like, cool. They're like, you said exactly what I need to hear. I was like, well, we planned that a year ago. And they're like, huh? And so it's really neat to see how it's not the efforts necessarily of the staff and the volunteers and people, it's what God's setting the stage for. And I believe that you landed here even today, not on accident, but on purpose, that God had a reason for you being here and being a part of this as we travel through this battle that happens, that I want to begin to have belief and understanding in God and follow him. And if we've been following him for a while, maybe we've kind of lost our way. And what does it mean to move with him completely at 100 miles an hour and just say, God, I'm all in, and I would just want to keep journeying with you. And we're going to get to this guy today by the name of Thomas. And it's going to be over in John chapter 20 is where we're going to be at today. And so if you have a Bible, you can turn over there. It's in the New Testament of the Bible. And if you're not familiar with your way around that, you can flip over to the table of contents, look, find the New Testament. Bible's broken up in Old and New. Find New Testament, find John. Now, don't be confused with 1st and 2nd and 3rd John. That'll throw you. Look for Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. We're going to be in John chapter 20, and in a little while, we'll be starting in verse 24. If you don't have a Bible, we give them away for free. We believe everybody needs an easy-to-read translation of the Bible, and so you can stop by the Get Connected table. We also, if you're like, I'm going to forget that like I forget everything else, but you remember your phone because it's like an electronic leash. And so for you, you go, man, my phone goes everywhere. Go to your app store, search for the Bible app, and you'll find an icon that looks like that. And if you want to take notes today or keep up with previous sermon series that we've done, and you can download this. And we hear from a lot of forefronters. So it'll be like, man, I was traveling on Easter Sunday, but I got to watch what was going on. Thank you so much for providing something like that. And there's blogs and small groups and things, and so you can download those in your app store. We are pro using your phone during service. If you see somebody playing Angry Birds, just hit them with the love of Jesus and say, hey, don't play Angry Birds, you're distracting me from this. And we would love if you engage that, and so you can engage it digitally. And so we catch up in a moment with this guy named Thomas. And I think that Thomas is a lot like you and I. A lot of the times when I'll have a conversation with people, they'll say, I feel like I'm, like in the Old Testament, there's a story named David and Goliath. You may have heard that story before. People go, I'm David. And I'm like, no, you're not. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, because there's thousands of people off to the side who are wetting themselves, scared to death, and David's the only one who stood up and did anything. And so sometimes we want to be like, I'm the champion, I'm the champion. Well, the odds are, most of the time in the stories, we're not the champion. We would be the one off to the side like everyone else going like, I just don't know what to do. If we're being honest with ourselves, we like to place ourselves as like the hero of the story. But more often than not, as we wrestle with life and the circumstances and things, we go, man, in this story, I think we are a lot more like Thomas. Because Thomas, he kind of keeps everything real in how he addresses it and how he moves and the questions that he asks. When we dive into this concept of how do I believe and what do I believe and how am I working that out as I track through this journey with God. And so if you have a Bible, it's over in John chapter 20, starting in verse 24. You guys ready? 2 of you are. The rest of you guys are like, oh, I didn't know. It was respond. You're allowed to talk in church, like respond and all that stuff. So you guys ready? Now you're getting excited. 9 a.m. had you a little beat, but we're working on it. Here we go. And if you don't have a Bible, it'll be here on the screen. John chapter 20, starting in verse 24. Now Thomas, also known as P. Diddy, was one of... No, it's interesting. Every time I've read this over the last few weeks, I was going over it, I was like, he needs some royalties from Sean Puffy Combs. Known as Didymus, he was the original one. He has some money due. Mo money, mo problems. Here we go. One of the 12 was not with the disciples, his followers, the followers of Jesus, when Jesus came. You see, this is catching up after he had been at the Easter story where he has been arrested, he's died on the cross, he went to the grave, he rose from the dead, and people start seeing him in places. Like first to like a few, and then to like crowds of almost 300, which even scholars on both sides have said, well, they're either they're hallucinating, like either it was Woodstock kind of circumstances, or maybe, just maybe, that 300 people couldn't corroborate a story like that without somebody dissenting in line, and maybe it just was true that Jesus was who he said he was, did what he said he was going to do, and rose from the dead and conquered the grave to set us free. And so he started appearing, and he appears to some of the followers, but Thomas was not with them. Verse 25, so the other disciples told him, we have seen the Lord. But Thomas said to them, unless I see the nail marks in his hands, and he's kind of a smart aleck, put my finger where the nails were, put my hand into his side where a spear had been taken, to make sure that Jesus was truly dead, because the Romans had perfected the art of taking someone's life. And so they had made sure 100% that Jesus was in fact gone, and there was no longer life inside of him before they took him down from the cross. Once I put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe. A week later, verse 26, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them this time. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, peace be with you. Pause there. How many of you would be a little freaked out right now? Oh, like everything is kind of on lockdown. Everybody set the ADT pad. All right, nobody can get in. It's like Fort Knox, and all of a sudden Jesus is just like, peace be with you. Like I would be like, time out, I need to go change because that just happened. It's like if you ever seen Mr. Deeds and he's like, where's that guy? He's like, you rang? I'm very sneaky. Like he just kind of shows up and I'd be like, this is intense. What just happened? That would be it. That's all I would need to know. I'm like, you're for real. You just appeared right here. But don't worry because Jesus isn't done. After he's appeared and everybody changed, then he said to Thomas, put your finger here, see my hands, reach out your hand and put it into my side, stop doubting and believe. He kind of puts Thomas on blast mode for a second. He's like, listen, though I wasn't there during your conversation, I know what happened, and I know your heart, and oh, you want to have doubt? Well, here I am. You want to feel the holes here. Here, and you want to feel what happened to me? You want to see it for real? I'm right here. And I love Thomas's response. Verse 28, Thomas said to him, my Lord and my God. You could easily translate that, I'm sorry I was so naive and didn't believe you. Because as he addresses him, my Lord and my God, what he's saying is, you know what? You are who you said you are. I believe you. Verse 29, Jesus told him, because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen, you and I, and yet have believed. We're going to look a lot at what faith looks like in this battle for our hearts and our minds today. But before we do that, I want to pray for you and I. Let's pray. God, I thank you that we get to be a part of this, and I thank you for stories like Thomas that get to keep things a little more real, and that we don't all have to be champions and heroes in this existence, and that it's okay to ask questions, and it's okay to have doubts, and you don't shame him. You love on him and improve who you are, who you say you are. You fulfill your promise. And as we learn from your teaching today, may we press pause on some of the things that we've built up and excuses that we've made and hurts that we have that have built up a wall to protect our hearts from being fully engaged, to being fully in, to dive in with you. We prepare our ears to hear afresh today, and our hearts to just be open to what you want to teach us. It's through Jesus we pray all these things. Amen. If you don't plan on having kids, I just want to say good for you. Good for you, all right? If you've kind of made that, if you have kids, good for you too. I love when people are aware enough to know, like, I'm ready to be a parent. And some people go like, I'm not cut out for that. And that's okay. Like, that's not being selfish. That's helping with natural selection, okay? Because if you're not ready to be a parent, then you have like a kid, like that's not going to go well at all. And so people that have like the Duggars, they're like, we know how to have kids, and a lot of them. And so they did their job. You don't, but kids are interesting because before you have kids, and you ask anybody that has them, you were cool. Yeah, you were cool before you had kids. Once you have kids, you are no longer cool. No matter how hard you try, no matter how the fanny pack sits around your waist on the family trip, you are not cool. And I've tried to explain to our daughters that there was a time and day in years that have gone by that mommy and daddy were cool, and they don't believe us at all. Like I love skateboarding, and I have a bunch of these. I was collecting stuff because for years I skateboarded competitively and just had a blast doing it and being a part of it. And so I gave them a bunch of skateboards for their American Girl dolls because they were this size. I was like, that's cool, but you can't have this one. They're like, why? I was like, well, this is a Tony Hawk board. How many of you guys know Tony Hawk? You've heard that name? Yeah, right? Like Tony Hawk is like the skateboarder of skateboarders. Phenomenal skateboarder. I think it's just genetic because his kids defy logic and gravity on a skateboard. It's just unreal. It's not really fair to anybody, but he and his whole family are just absolutely amazing. And I shared the story with our daughters. I was like, because we'll get out in the street. They're like, Daddy, you skateboard? I was like, yeah, I skateboard. And I'll do tricks and stuff. They're like, ooh. But Roxy, our middle child, she'd be like, Daddy, nuh-uh. She just doesn't believe that. I was like, I used to be pretty good before, Daddy, ate another daddy. And, before, that... I don't know how I feel about what just happened right now. I don't know. I thought we had a friendship going, and it just out the window. Out the beautiful outdoor window. Before Daddy's knees got bad and things, and so they're like, for real? And I told them this story about Tony Hawk. You see, they did a tour where they came through and had a really cool demo where all these professional skateboarders were traveling and skateboarding. And you were able to go and skateboard with some of these phenomenal professional skateboarders. And one of the best things you can do in skateboarding is a nod to other skateboarders is you can get yad, which basically means is you do a trick and they'll be like, yeah, and guys will start clapping. And there was this ramp that was about this high. It was just a wedge ramp that you could do tricks off of onto flat ground. So it was about this high. And I did a front side grab, which is essentially, if I had a larger skateboard, both feet on the board, out, grab it, and then land back down. I land that trick. Tony Hawk goes riding by. He's like, yeah. And I was like, that's it. I'm done. Done. Quit my skateboarding career. I'm good. The man of all men skateboarding just yadded me. Me. That's awesome. And I'm telling my girls this story, and Chloe, our oldest, as we're sitting out there playing and skateboarding in the driveway out in the front, and Roxy's like, nope, didn't happen. I'm like, you little punk. I'm just... And there's been other stuff. I told my girls, before you guys were here, Daddy was in a band. We toured and did stuff and played with cool other bands. And they're like, nope. And I would get out. And now granted, it was amazing. It was ska. I don't know if you've heard of that. I know it's going to come back one day. Nah, not really. Yeah. The groan. They were like, no, that's not going to happen. There's all kinds of, their 80s came back, 90s came back. One day, I'm holding close. And so, we recorded stuff, and I sang in the band, and it was awesome. And I showed the girls, and I'm like, here, listen to this. And so Chloe, our oldest, is like, okay, she believed in Roxy. Nope, didn't happen. I'm like, what is wrong with you, little child? Even recently, the news came out, and they were like, we need to do a story on Holland Road. Any of you guys see the news? Where they let an ugly guy with a beard be on the news. And so they were like, hey, we'd love to do a story about them widening the road. And I was like, only if you put our Forefront Church sign in the background, then I'll do the interview. And so I was standing there, I was like, did you get all the sign? You get it, right? Because free publicity, I'm all about that. And we're out there doing it, and I get home, I'm like, girls, I'm going to be on the news. Chloe's like, cool. Roxy's like, no, you're not. I'm not sure if we want to keep you here. And so finally, I'm like, no, so we DVR it, we get there, and Daddy's gonna be, and she was still seeing me on the TV, are you sure? I don't know, we're gonna sell you on eBay. I don't know what's gonna, we do kind of say those things sometimes, but that's because we're awful parents. And it's interesting to watch our kids as we talk about them, and Roxy's doubt was all because she was never there when it happened. And I think for us, in our battle and our wrestling with faith and belief, is do we truly believe the things that we're hearing and that we're seeing and that we're experiencing with God? Or are we just going, that happened a long time ago, I'm not quite sure that could ever happen to me, and now, and it's interesting, and we ask this question as we encounter the story of Jesus, is how could I believe in this? I got this model of this human brain. Actually, underneath your seat, if you want to grab it, you have a little version of this because there's no way we could afford to give you all a huge brain. And you have one inside of you already that's about this weight. Now, whether or not each of us use it all the way is a different story, and it's interesting to see the way the brain works when it comes to this story. there's things that we would go, I totally believe that. We see the sky, we go outside, oh, the sky is blue, I believe that. We hear different stories, but the brain isn't always what it seems to be, because some of us would say, man, I'm in a perfectly good airplane, but someone has convinced me that it would be a great idea to strap a parachute to me and jump out of this perfectly good airplane. I don't understand it. Like, if God wanted me to fly, he would have given me wings. Like, I'm going to keep my feet on the ground. Or maybe some others of you would say, you know what, somebody convinced me that it was a really great idea to put a huge rubber band on my back and then jump off of something just to the ground, just hoping that everybody strapped everything in all right and everything would be good. And I'm thinking to myself, no way, Jack. Like, that's great if you're living on the edge like that. You're like, I'm living life to the fullest. I'm like, no, because there's something inside the front part of my brain that goes, that is bad. I could land on the ground. The chute won't work. That rubber band that some guy made in some factory could break. I'm going to keep planted on the ground here. And we process things very differently. And then all of a sudden we encounter the story of Jesus. We go, could I believe this? And it mills around in our brain. And a lot of times when we hear this story, what you usually hear along with it is it begins in your heart, in this touchy-feely sort of way. And I would contend that it actually doesn't start in your heart as much as it does in your mind. As much as it does making a cognitive choice to say, I'm hearing this, and while some of this stuff is hard to overcome, what I'm hearing, I'm beginning to believe. But there's a battle for that, and Satan doesn't want any one of us to believe or begin to engage this story. And there's some things about belief that I would say are not true. As we look at belief and see how it happens, and we look at the story of Thomas as he's wrestled with this, as he's moved through this, is that belief is not about knowledge. And I hear people say, as we've done this for years, and I've been in ministry 17 plus years, and what I've watched is people say this phrase, and it almost like goes as a red flag to me when I hear it, is, hey man, I just want to go deeper. And I hear it, and what I hear is I want more knowledge. In belief, whether you have heard it before or not, is not about how much knowledge you have. I think it's great to have knowledge. I think, we have a basics class that's coming up, and whether you've been at Forefront since the beginning or you've just started coming, I would say go and be a part of it. And it's a free class. There's free lunch. There's free resource afterwards. There's free childcare. But what it does is you begin to learn about God and faith in the Bible from beginning to end. But I would still contend that belief isn't about knowing everything, because when people come to me and say, I just want to go deeper, I begin to ask, well, how are you at bringing people with you to church, sharing the story that God has placed in your heart? Well, it's been a while, and things are okay, and it gets a little uncomfortable. I say, well, okay, how are you at reading your Bible? Like just daily, like engaging God and reading your Bible and those kind of things. Well, yeah, but it's like, okay, well, let's put that to the side. Well, how are you at serving people? Like going out of your way to love on other people and share with them and take care of other people. Whether it's outside the church or inside the church, you're like, well, and I'm like, well, how are you at being generous? Like, to other people outside the church and inside the church, like, how are you doing with that? And like, well, say, I don't think it's a question of going deeper. I think it's a question of being faithful. It's saying, God, I want to trust you and I want to move with you. And I don't have to have everything under the sun in my head. I went to Bible college, like a place where you just go and study the Bible. I know it sounds really boring. There are some stories which are inappropriate and I would not share, but it was fun and it was a blast and it was college. But we went and we studied the Bible. Now, the valedictorian of my class, you could say, this book, this chapter, this verse, and he would begin saying it. I mean, amazing knowledge of the Bible. You know what he does today? He was studying to be a pastor and go plant a church. He builds houses, and he doesn't engage faith. Being someone who follows Jesus isn't about all the stuff you know. Belief is not about building up a wealth of knowledge. When I sit and talk with people, I'm like, hey, let me Google like because they're like, hey, I really need help with this or whatever. I was like, well, let me some of the notes that I have, they're like, but don't you have it like memorized? I'm like, no. And they're like, are you for real? I was like, man, there's things that I want to forget. Like, I want to be able to fill that with other information. I don't know why the lyrics to TLC's Waterfalls is stuck in there. I wish I could get that out. And then I could remember, don't go chase. No. And so, like, I wish that would go away and that I wouldn't know, Crossroads by Thuggish Ruggish Bone, that I could get that out and put other stuff in. But the fact of the matter is, I'm not going to memorize everything. And so, but I know that I'm being faithful to what God wants me to do. I know I'm being faithful as a husband and as a father and in my occupation and everything that I do, I'm trying to follow him. And so I would contend that it's not about knowledge in belief. The other side of that, when we look at belief, is that it's not about, and I would call this P cubed. It's not about your past, your present, or your perceived future. Your belief is not based in those. Because you could say, well, the reason that I don't really follow through with God and believe is because I was really hurt in my past. And I talk to people a lot who would say, because of these roadblocks, I'm not sure I can go forward because of what's transpired. Or Jason, I hear you on Sunday morning, and man, singing's awesome, and the message, man, it hits home, but when we get in our car, you don't know what's happening in my house. And so as we do this, I don't believe that I can really sit in my faith and in my trust and believe because of what's happening in the here and now. It's so hard and you just don't understand. Or those two things coupled, we begin to assume things about our perceived future. We believe them to be true. We go, God, because of the road that I see myself going down, there is no way that I can move in where I'm at. And I need to tell you that belief is not about your past, present, or your perceived future. That your belief and the way that you move is dictated by a God who loves you, cares for you, and fulfills his promises. And it is not about the things that you feel like are holding you down. There's a great author and a pastor, his name's Craig Rochelle, and he wrote this book called The Christian Atheist. And when he wrote this, it was from the vantage point of people that say they love God but don't do anything with it. And they act as if they just don't believe God at all, even though they claim that. And you may have encountered someone like that. You may have even lived that story out in your own life. And this is what he said are some of the roadblocks that happen and false belief that people garner that keep them from trusting God. Some are simply bound by a false belief. They think they aren't good with people, or they'll never be, and never will be. Or they're convinced that they'll always have a negative attitude. Some believe they could never get in good physical shape. And so what they do is they get depressed and they move on and they blame God and they get sad, and so they don't move forward. Others are convinced they're destined to remain in a meaningless job. They're imprisoned by false thoughts, all along believing they can never escape, never change. And then, and this is the one that I think is so much within our culture, and I know that it rose up in me that I didn't even see it until people who really cared about me pointed it out to me, and they pointed out to me multiple times before I saw it as truth. A lot of defenses raised up. But I think if we evaluate this, it could be true. It was true of my life, and maybe it's true of yours. And then there are those who have serious problems but don't even know it. They too remain locked in a prison they're not even aware exists. You know, there's so many things that well up in us that keep us from belief. And so we begin to probe and ask ourselves and use our minds to say, God, what is it? I want to believe. There's steps that I want to take. And maybe for you, you're locked in that prison where you're just like, I just don't know. And someone's said something to you, and now you're even maybe replaying that moment of, man, I know that they said something to me, but I just don't agree with it. And eventually enough people will say something, you go, maybe that's true. A lot of us aren't self-aware, and we need someone from the outside to be able to do that. But what my hope is, when people ask me, okay, Jason, those are reasons that people have roadblocks to believe. Why do you believe? Why do you, and for maybe some of you, why, you're asked that question, why do you believe? Why have you put faith in that? Why in that battle you've chosen to follow him? And I would say this, if you don't get anything else today, that you would hear this and this would track through the rest of your week. So that as you get to Tuesday, after you've gone through Monday and you're, hashtag Struggleville, as you've moved through the day, you're just like, oh, another day of work. And then you get to Tuesday where you're winding up, but then bad things have happened, things go awry, family life, whatever, that you would be able to cling to this. That's what we believe, and I believe, because he fulfills his promises, and it changes everything. When God does what only he can do through his Son, he fulfills his promises, and it changes everything. It changes every type of outlook, but it begins with belief. It does impact my heart, and Dan, our adult ministries pastor, is going to unpack that next week. And I hope that you do not miss it, because it is so crucial to look at the way God is just wrestling for our hearts. And so as it moves through this, I believe, because I see his promises, that even when everything's hit the fan and the bottom has dropped out and I don't feel like anything makes sense, that God is the one that I can cling to, because he's never let me down. And you may say, Jason, you just don't understand. I have stuff that's going on, and God has let me down. You can shake your fist at the sky. That's okay. He's big enough to handle it. All through the Bible, there are stories of men and women who have said, God, why? And God waited, and God listened. And then God began to open up and show them. And I can say it's true in my life, of moments where I got so mad at God that I said hurtful things that I would never utter from the stage, that only he and I know, and it broke my heart in instances. But he would begin to prove himself over time, that bad things just happen. But he was the hope, and began to change my mind, which then changed my heart. And he worked in me to create this beautiful heart that we'll talk about next week, about what does it mean to really live out a life that honors him. Love the way it's written in 1 Peter later on in the New Testament. It says, but just as he who calls you is holy, so be holy in all you do, for it is written, be holy, because I am holy. When we begin belief, it changes our heart. I was recently at a place called the House of Bacon. If you need proof that God exists, there's a place called the House of Bacon. Amen. And we're there, and we walk in, and every Friday we do family time. And so if you ask us to go and hang out with you on a Friday, we're probably going to say no, because we guard that with everything. And so we have family time on Fridays, and we have this app called the Randomizer, and we spin the wheel, and it has you can plug in, so it has our names on it, and somebody, when the wheel hits your name, you get to decide what we do for the day or the evening for dinner activities. And so we spin it. It could be dangerous because you have kids, but you never know. We go along with it, and it lands on our oldest, Chloe. And Chloe, even though we don't eat a lot of bacon, said, I heard about the House of Bacon. You were looking on Facebook. I saw it. I want to go. It's like, all right, we're going to the House of Bacon. So we walk in to the House of Bacon, and nobody talks to us. And so I still think you should go there and try it out, whatever. I'm sure they've worked out the kinks. But we go there, and we wait, and we wait, and we wait, and nobody talks to us. And so we've been there about 25 minutes, and I can see the look on her face. It's like, I'm going to eat some bacon. And so we're like, all right, we're going to stay. And finally, a lady walks over. She's like, sorry, we're short-staffed. And so that kind of disarms us a little bit. It's going to be a while. We're getting tables set. And so we're watching other people leave, other people sit down, people that came in, others that came in. I was like, did they come in after us? And I'm getting pretty frustrated. And my daughter can see this. But I'm like, I'm going to go tell somebody, Jesus, you're going to need to leave because I need to be Jason for a hot second. And so, I don't want you to see what's about to go down. So, you just go outside and wait in the park. I'm thinking to myself, because I need to let these people know that this isn't okay. And so I feel this the whole time. I'm like, oh, and Carrie, my wife's looking at me like, oh. And so I feel this time, I'm like, what? And Daddy, and it's Chloe, and she wants to eat the bacon. She's like, Daddy, this is, we need to be patient. God teaches us to be patient. We get to be patient. And look at her, why you learn about Jesus? Why you gotta? I didn't say that. But I'm like, dang, just threw me under the bus, kid. But she was right. But what I'm watching is my daughter is learning and begin belief about God, and what it's doing is it's changing her heart. But it starts when she's beginning to say, I believe that God's real. I believe that God loves us. And as I'm beginning to believe, it's beginning to change my heart. And I don't know where you're at, but I'll tell you what. You can think over all kinds of things. When you lay your head down on the pillow, some of you guys, you go out. Like you're out. Like before you even hit the pillow, you're snoozing. But maybe for you, as you go through the day or as you lay your head down, you're thinking about all kinds of things, about the questions of life. And God, are you real? And God, do you care about me? And God, what about this existence? God, are you going to heal this brokenness that's happening? You ask me why I believe and why I hope you'll continue to come back so you can begin to believe that to be true as well. I believe because, well, he fulfills his promises. God has never let me down, and he never will. I'll let you down. Other people will let you down. The greeters will let you down. The children's ministry will let you down. Your relatives, people under your own roof, I'm sure have already let you down. But God never does. And because he fulfills his promises and does not let us down, while life is still hard and hard things happen, don't hear me say that nothing bad happens. You follow Jesus and it's rainbows and butterflies. It's not. But as you follow him, you have a hope in something greater because he never lets you down. And because of that, it changes everything. Changes everything. Pray with me.